So before we start this next project, I wanted to let you know you can download a vector file of this phone that we're going to use so we can quickly just create kind of a placemat or a place setting for our mobile app design so we can present it nicely. So you can have access to this vector file. I have two different files in the downloadable resources. I have a .eps and I have a .svg. So SVG is a special vector file. A lot of icons are created using SVG so that browsers can manipulate the vector and scale it without distortion on browsers, and icon sets and all that stuff are designed in it. But SVG is a great file format for Adobe XD. I can open up Adobe XD and I can drag this right in and it's going to start to read it. So you notice you can open up the EPS in Adobe Illustrator, or the SVG, you can just drag this directly into Adobe XD. And this is true for any SVG file, and look at that, it's already in there and editable. So this is what we're going to be creating, is this project right here. We're going to just create a couple of glass elements, kind of show some frosted, show it unfrosted. We're going to be creating some triangles so that we can have something high color so you can show off this glass morphism effect. We're not going to need any photos for this, so let's get started. Let's open up a fresh new document. Let's go to File, New. Let's go ahead and do a Web 1920 just because I want to create kind of a more presentation kind of style. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and have some room for background elements. And we can bring our phone right in. I'll just show how I did this again. All you have to do is just drag that SVG file, and any kind of icons or vector graphics SVG can easily be dragged right in here. You can always right click and ungroup if you want to be able to have access to one of the elements, like this is the background picture. So what I want to do is I want to have lots of bright pops of color. We talked about color trends being highly saturated hues, bright and vibrant. Let's try to do kind of some deep purples and then do some high contrast yellows, maybe for our triangles like you saw in the example. So what we could do is we could go to Fill, and instead of just a solid color, we can add a radial gradient. And let's do some cool purple tones. So we're going to take purple and bring it all the way down to make a deep purple. I'm going to select the one on the right, make it a little bit lighter purple, and I might need to switch the position of these. Let's click on this to go brighter, and then go here and go deeper. So we want to have kind of the lighter in the center of the radial gradient. We can, of course, make that compact or make it extended, whatever look we want to go for. So simple gradient added. Let's get some triangle shapes so we can show off the frosted glass look in the background. So I'm just getting a triangle. I'm going to hold down Shift so I can get a nice even triangle. And I'm going to take out any type of border. So borders are default, so just make sure to go and uncheck the border. And I'm going to like everything nice and rounded too. Nice rounded one. Let's do a nice color, bright saturated color. A good contrast to purple is yellow. So let's go for a bright yellow. Maybe add a tiny bit of orange to tone it down so it's not so bright. So there's our first triangle. Hold down Shift, make it a little bit bigger. Hold down Option and drag. Or Control, I believe it's on Windows, and drag, and you can create a second triangle. Let's change kind of the angle, and let's make this a different color. How about orange? So we have our two little triangles so we can see our frosted glass effect. So let's create kind of a logo in the center. Let's get a circle, hold down Shift so I can create a nice even circle, and let's apply our glass effect. So let's put our triangles here so we can see how the effect is being loaded. We're going to go down here to background blur, and just like that we have our cool frosted glass effect. Let's change our border to a little bit lighter color, but not white, just kind of a little bit of a light gray. Let's see if it allows us, instead of 1, let's see if it allows us to split the difference, because I think that might be a little bit too thick. So let's do 0.8 instead of a 1. Or it does allow us to do partial numbers, so that's good. So let's reduce the blur a little bit. So I'm taking the blur, which is the first option, and I'm just going to bring it down. I want to be able to still see the definition of the triangle. If I do that, then it's hard to really tell what the shape is through it. I want people to be able to see through to the background elements, but also make the text readable. So it's a really delicate balance. So let's do, right now, let's just stick with 14 and see how that looks. The brightness, if we want to have like a dark UI and have a dark background, we can do that. Let's have it be bright because I want to put maybe some darker text on top. And if you ever have problems with readability, you can also increase the transparency of the effect so it kind of slowly fades away. If you ever have issues with readability, you could always put like a dark gray or black text on top. That would be super readable. Or if you want the effect to really be in full play, you can bring it down to 0. So you got 3 different options to tweak this quite a bit. So let's add our text. Let's take our text tool and add some words right here in the frosted glass circle. So there's 2 ways to make text. You can click and drag and make kind of a text box, or you can just click once with the type tool and have more of a headline type that doesn't have the text box that collapse. We want to kind of keep it in a circle, so let's do a text box. We're going to click the type tool, click and drag to create more of a paragraph style text box where it collapses, just like this. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So then we can kind of cut this a little bit. Glass morphism. You want to kind of cut where you see syllables. So glass morphism. So that will probably cut better than cutting it here where you say glass morphism. Doesn't make sense, but morphism, you could probably get away with cutting it. Okay, so there is that position. Let's see what we need to do to get this to work. So we can even do it on typography. You can do the background blur to give it a glass effect as well. So we're having problems with having both be frosted glass elements because now I'm having a really hard time reading it. So let's edit our settings on our circle. So let's bring it down to 7 for blur and 12 for brightness. That'll kind of help everything pop out a little bit. And for the type, we probably need to lessen the effect. So now we have the typography selected. So let's settle on 14 for blur and 41 for brightness. And another thing I want to do is I'm going to start making this like a presentation. Let's copy this background shape, and I'm just going to make it all the way across the background just to kind of give a little less contrast between the background and the design. There we go. So now you can really focus. I'm just continuing to make small adjustments. I just changed the position of the triangles and just trying to find a nice little fit for this layout and just added the background. So let's add some more elements. Let's practice making a button. So up top, we're going to get a square tool and we're just going to make a simple button size. And we're going to slightly round it, not much, just a little bit. And we are going to do our background blur. And let's change our border to white. And what we're going to do is instead of having this white border, so we can select our button, click on border, and we can make it a 50% opacity so it's not like a solid full color. It kind of lets some of the color, it's transparent as well. So that kind of helps with the realism of it. So all I did was went to border, and then this is kind of how you change the opacity or transparency. So we have a button. It can have the same frosted glass effect up there as well. So we can go ahead and copy and paste this text here and type in button and maybe the strength, maybe not extra bold, but let's do regular. There is the button. Let's do this one with just a border. So we are going to click off fill and just have a border, and then we can bring that up to kind of show what that would look like. We could also do a different level of frostedness. So we can click back on fill if we wanted to, and we can kind of make it less frosted, more frosted, or also change it so it's kind of like a darker color. Lots of options we can do there. So let's create some more effects. So let's do a sliding bar option. So let's get our rectangle tool. We're going to just make a pill shape. So we're going to just bring it all the way to a pill shape. So we can change our border. We can make it semi-transparent by making it 50% opacity. And we can do our background blur. And let's make it a little bit skinnier, just like that. So that'll be kind of our slider. And let's make the slider component or the slider button. Let's get the square tool and let's make a button that'll fit nicely right in there. And let's not have too much leftover space. We can do kind of the same settings, 50%. We could do a background blur on this. And when it comes to the slider, you want to make it really stand out a lot because you want people to be able to see it. So let's change the border so it's not gray, but let's keep it at a full opacity so you can really see it better. So let's adjust the settings so it's a little bit brighter than the slider underneath. You can even animate this so it can slide across. And make this border a tiny bit thinner. Sometimes you have to type in something manually if it's lower than 1, so maybe 0.8. Let's do some bars with color. It's kind of indicating a dollar amount. So let's first do our dollar amount. I'm just gonna do a text box and type in, let's say it's for a money management app. Just type in kind of a generic number. Let's make sure my spacing is set to 0. Tighten that up, make it a pretty bold typeface. Let's do extra bold. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Of course, you don't have to use the exact numbers I do. You can just experiment with sizes. And let's give this a frosted glass look too. Let's do a very thin border on this. So we're going to click on border, and we have a 0.5 set, so that's kind of a half a full point. And let's do background blur. I'm going to move it over to our triangle so you can kind of see how the effect is looking. There we go. Let's go ahead and have a pretty low blur. So the final settings for this is 14 blur and 41 brightness. I thought that had a nice readability even when you had it over the triangle. And we might want to lessen the border a little bit, maybe kind of make that a little bit semi-transparent. Let's try 50. And I think that looks a little bit more realistic. Gives you little highlights on the stroke, but it doesn't look kind of fake either. So let's add some financial elements. We have a number. Let's have kind of some chart bars to denote a graph. Just kind of playing around here with elements. We're not doing any kind of serious UI brainstorming here. We're just kind of showing how this effect works. So just creating a series of bars. Let's go ahead and get this set up before we duplicate. Let's do a background blur. Let's get the border, just kind of what we've been doing, 50%. Let's make it a white, and let's reduce the size, maybe 8.5. And let's make it slightly rounded. I just want to round the top and not the bottom. Let's hold down Option and click just to isolate one corner. Hold down Option or Control if you're on a Windows. Let's see how the frosted glass effect looks. Let's create a rectangle that's really bright green, like maybe a lime green that indicates money and growth. So let's do a fill. Let's get a bright green going on. And let's not have a border on this, and let's make it rounded. We're just kind of have a background element that's going to run through this. It's going to be behind, so we're going to put it in the back of the layering system. So Command left bracket is going to bring it behind in the layering system. And so now we can see how the frosted glass effect looks. So let's bring down the blur so you can kind of see the background elements a little bit. So it kind of gives it more of a glassy look. So we only have 3 in terms of blurring. In terms of brightness, let's make it nice and bright. Let's keep to 20 or 18. And we're not going to change that effect too much. So let's go ahead and hold down Option or Control. And let's change the graph. And so you can notice when I click and drag, it's going to automatically snap so that everything is equally spaced, which is very nice to have. So you can also easily animate this too when we get to the animation. So let's kind of move some of these elements around. Kind of bring it up.